Hello everyone and welcome to this Back on Track session. My name is Isobel. I'm an Education Community Manager here at ACCA and I'm really happy to be joined by my colleague Krutika, who is a Digital Education Delivery Lead. This session is designed for students who have been unsuccessful in a foundations level or applied knowledge exam. We do understand that failing an exam is a very disappointing experience, but if this has happened to you, we want you to know that you're not alone. The ACCA exams are challenging, so let's begin with a big well done for getting started. Today in this session, we want to help you work out what went wrong so you can plan for success in your next exam attempt. We're going to be sharing different tips, lots of practical guidance, and although we won't be answering technical queries, we will point you in the direction of lots of useful ACCA resources that will help you build your knowledge. You'll find the relevant links in the video description for this event, so don't worry if you can't access them or not sure where they are. You can use those to look them up later. Do get involved in the chat. Some of you have already said hello. It's always lovely to hear from you. Let us know what exams you're preparing for and say hello to your fellow students. Now we're going to get started and we're going to begin with some advice on how to reflect on your recent exam experience and how you can reframe failure and see it as an opportunity for growth. And the first thing at this point to mention is that failure does not define you. You can absolutely bounce back from the experience and try to put the failure into perspective by reminding yourself of the bigger picture and your bigger overall aims. Remember that lots of people have experienced similar setbacks too. It's a very common experience and one that offers a chance to learn. Failing can actually help you in the long run. It helps you to develop the skills that are required to succeed in your future exams. And to reframe the experience of failure, we must switch from something that is called a fixed mindset to something called a growth mindset. And by that, I mean a fixed mindset is a mindset that views circumstances and skills as unchangeable, as fixed. Whereas a growth mindset knows that with time and effort, it is possible to go on and achieve your goals. This is obviously a far more positive and proactive mindset, and it will really help you progress through your ACCA journey. Now, it is really important to take time to reflect and identify where you went wrong in your last exam. So when you do stop and pause and take that time to reflect on your last attempt, try to review the experience as a whole. Consider the different planning, learning, and revision stages, as well as the exam itself. Think about what went well, because stuff will have gone well, and think about what you can replicate next time and maintain good habits. But of course, you also need to think about your weaknesses and you need to be honest about this because I know personally how tempting it is to avoid critical self-reflection. It's a really uncomfortable and often unpleasant experience, but it's really going to help you in the long term. And of course, rather than dwelling on failure, try focusing on solutions because something will need to change next time. Something needs to change before your next attempt in order for you to be successful. And hopefully by the end of this session today, you'll have a better idea of what that thing that needs to change is. And so on that, I hope that quick introduction has been useful. I'm going to pass on to my colleague, Krutika, and you'll see on the slide here what she's going to cover. We're going to talk about technical knowledge, the exam interface, question practice, and time management. And these are all things that we know we get a lot of questions from students about. So over to you, Krutika.
Thank you so much, Isobel, and hello to everyone that's joining us today. It's great to be joining you on this conversation, and as Isobel sort of flagged at the beginning of this session, we won't be dealing with technical content queries because what we want to do is provide some more general tips and guidance that will be beneficial to everyone that's considering an on-demand resit. And I can already see that Fel is messaging on the chat there. You're doing FMA, but it's difficult for me. I'm so sorry to hear that you're facing challenges with FMA. What I'm really hoping is through this segment and the segment that Isobel will also continue, that you'll feel a little bit more calmer and you'll know what the resources are that can help you with your FMA studies. And Sharon is doing her FA2 exam. Lovely to have you, Sharon. And Prithvi also earlier saying hello. So great to have you join us in this conversation. So as Isabel's called out, what you see on this slide is really a collection of headings which we've identified as the main areas of focus that students should be considering when they're thinking about their resit. So what I want to do is briefly talk about what these areas are, and then I want to take a moment to share my screen because I'm actually going to spotlight some of the resources that ACCA make available to you that will help you address these areas of focus. So Fel, coming back to your point with FMA and you're finding it difficult, hopefully when I share my screen and show you some of these resources, you'll be able to dip into some of these and help, and these will help you with your studies. So let's actually start off with technical knowledge. And it seems like a really obvious point, but I'm going to state it, okay? Before you sit any exam, you really need to have a good grasp of the technical knowledge. Now, all the ACCA exams will have a syllabus, and within that syllabus, there'll be a series of learning outcomes that you need to satisfy. But what we sometimes find with students that have failed an exam, and they'll often admit to this, is that they've engaged in what we call selective revision. Okay, now we understand that as a student, you're probably juggling multiple things. You know, you're not just studying, you might also be working, you might have family, you might have other commitments. So we know that as humans, we have tendencies then to seek out these quick fixes. Okay, and I'll put my hand up and I'll admit that when I was a student, selective revision was often a strategy I adopted. But let me tell you, it is a strategy you do not want to be using in your exams. Okay, and what we mean by selective revision is this idea that you might only focus on those topic areas that you think are going to come up, or you've been told by a friend or a colleague is more likely to be tested. Okay, and we often have students giving us questions in webinars or these sorts of live events where they will ask, what topic should I focus on? And actually there's no shortcut answer, because the answer there is you really need to focus on all the topics that are within your syllabus. You need to satisfy those learning outcomes. Granted, there will be certain topics that the examiner likes to test with a bit more frequency than others. So if you're doing financial accounting, for example, we know that section B questions will typically have accounts preparation and a consolidation question. But remember, these ACCA exams are testing the breadth of coverage across the syllabus, so you need to make sure that you cover the syllabus learning outcomes. It's a very risky strategy to engage in selective revision. Okay, so the first point to mention as an area of focus, if you're thinking about this resit, is to make sure you brush up on any knowledge gaps that you might have. And like I said, in a moment, I will be sharing some useful resources. Now, coming on to the exam interface and question practice, we know that for students, but for many students, up until this point, you might have only been taking exams using pen and paper, but actually all the ACCA exams are computer-based. So something that students underestimate is the importance of getting acquainted with that exam interface. Now, if you don't get the exposure or the experience of the exam environment ahead of your real exam, not only will you end up wasting time on the day of the exam trying to navigate things, but you'll end up giving yourself what we call a micro stress moment. Okay, and a micro stress moment is not going to put you in good stead to completing that exam to time. Okay, and it's something that will feed into time management, which I'll touch on as well. Now, obviously, if you're joining us on this call, you've already experienced a setback. You've seen the exam, you've experienced it. You might even still remember the look and feel of that software, depending on how far long ago you might have sat the exam. But in any case, I would strongly encourage that before you attempt the next exam, before you take that resit, you do spend a bit of time getting really comfortable with the on-demand exam interface. Now, ACCA do make available lots of resources to help you here as well, including the specimen exams, which again, I will show you in a moment when I share my screen. If you've accessed these specimen exams already, brilliant, okay. Don't forget there are additional MTQs as well, okay, within the specimen exam, so you can get that extra bit of practice. We've also got a really useful video on our Student Study Resources YouTube channel. So you're on the channel right now if you're watching this live. We've got a useful video that walks through the exam interface. You can find this on the homepage under the Getting Started section. Some really, really useful navigation tips shared by an expert tutor. Now, I do just want to call out that when it comes to question practice, whether you're using the specimen exams or the practice test or any other question bank, you've got to try and do as much of it as possible. So try and engage in lots and lots of question practice, because there are a number of reasons why question practice is so important. Okay, firstly, if you start practicing questions and you get stuck on a particular question, well, that's going to be an indicator to you that that's maybe a topic area that you need to brush up on, which links back to the first point about technical knowledge. You'll be able to identify what those knowledge gaps are, okay? I think practice also helps to reinforce the application of what you're learning. These are going to be applied exams, okay? You're going to need to practice that technical content that you're learning through the question practice. You'll be able to retain and recall information better when you engage in question practice. Now, obviously, these are the foundations in accountancy and the applied knowledge exam. So yes, they're all objective test questions. So you might be thinking, well, yeah, that's just multiple choice. But actually, it goes beyond multiple choice. You know, if you're listening to this, you've done you've done an exam already, you'll know that it's not just multiple choice. It does include fill in the blank type questions or calculation style questions. And the more questions that you practice, the more you're being exposed to the various different question styles that you'll encounter on the exam day. Okay, and the more practice you do, because of that exposure, you're just going to feel more confident when it comes to the actual exam, because you'll be prepared for whatever question style or structure that the examiner throws at you. Now, something to also bear in mind with these on-demand exams is that your workings are not going to be marked. Okay, so when you're practicing questions, what you really need to think about is, how can I get to the answer in the quickest way? Okay, remember, you're up against time. That links to the final point about time management. So if there are shortcuts that you can use to arrive at an answer, do be sure to use those. So for example, in the financial accounting exam, you might see a question about accruals or calculating an expense that needs to go in the statement of profit or loss. Now, yes, you could use T accounts to work out the answer to that question, but at the same time, there's a shortcut formula that you can also use. So do think about this as an exam strategy when you're looking at some of these calculation questions. There's also the technique of elimination that you can adopt, okay? And by this, what I mean is that sometimes you'll look at a question, you'll look at the options, and you will know instantly that a couple of those will definitely not be the answer, okay? So use that technique of elimination to arrive at the correct answer where it's really obvious. But the point that I also want to state with these multiple choice questions is that you never want to leave one blank. Okay, with multiple choice, you've got 1 in 4 chance of getting the answer correct. So please, please, please do select one. Don't just leave it blank. And remember, the software does have a flagging tool that you can use. Okay, and I'll demonstrate this in a moment as well, so you can come back to revisit it. Now, to help you with these exam tips and technique points, ACCA do make available specimen exam debrief videos, especially for management accounting, financial accounting, and business and technology. So if you haven't dipped into these already, these are a really useful resource that will reiterate a lot of these tips and technique points that I mentioned. Now, the final point that I want to cover before I come on to share my screen is about time management. Okay, OGCB exams are all 2 hours long. There's 100 marks up for grabs, and that's around 1.2 minutes per mark, okay, for every, for 1.2 minutes available for every mark. Now, granted, you'll probably listen to this thinking, God, that's really tight timing. And actually, there'll be some questions that you can complete a lot quicker. Naturally, some might take you a little bit longer, and that's okay. Now, just the benefit of knowing this information is that when you're working through questions, you can think about timed question practice. And if you're spending too long on a particular question, you need to learn to move on. So often what we find with our students is that they failed an exam not because they didn't have the knowledge, but rather they just ran out of time. Okay, so my advice to you is to really keep an eye on the clock. And speaking of which, I'm going to keep an eye on the clock myself because I do want to share the screen to show you some of the useful resources. Okay, so if you give me a moment, and I can see some of you saying hello and thanks, I'm just going to quickly share my screen. So Isobel, do just let me know when the screen pops up at your end.
Will do. I was just going to say, welcome to everyone who's joining. It's really nice to see you getting involved in the chat. It's really good to see what exams you're studying for as well. I can now see your slides, Krutika, so I'll hand back over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Isobel. Okay, so what I'm going to run through here are some resources that can help you address some of the areas that I flagged on the slide. Okay, so firstly, and perhaps most importantly, I'm going to flag the ACCA Global website, and specifically there's a page within this that you definitely want to be bookmarking. It's our resource finder. How can you locate it? Well, if you go to ACCA Global and you click on the Students tab and specifically the Study Support Resources, what you'll find here is our resource finder. And I'm just going to flag that I'm looking this way to my screen because I've got another monitor where I'm screen sharing. So apologies, I'm not making eye contact with the camera here. I'm looking at my screen where I'm sharing. Okay, so this is your resource finder, and essentially you want to bookmark this page. Come back to this because this is your central hub, if you will, that contains all the other resources that I'm going to be referencing. Now, if you're sitting the foundational exam, I think we had someone doing the so Sharon, yes, doing the FA2 exam. Sharon, you can click on the foundational level here, select FA2 from the menu to find all the useful resources there. Now, if you're doing the full ACCA qualification, you're starting off at applied knowledge, or even if you're doing the level 4 diploma, you might want to click on the relevant exams here. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to dip into the financial accounting exam. Okay, and I keep talking about financial accounting because it used to be my favorite exam as a student. So let's stick with financial accounting. So the contents page that you see here is very much the same across all the exams. Okay, so you'll have a little contents page here. There'll be some useful resources in the margins, which I'll call out as well. You've got a section for getting started and learning and revision. Let's think about the first point where I said technical knowledge. And I think, Fel, you were sort of saying you're finding FMA really difficult, or, that's foundations in management accounting or management accounting. Well, if you dip into the management accounting page, there are technical resources that you can use to help you. So the first one I'm going to call out, and one that I'm really passionate about, is ACCA-X. Okay, I could talk hours on end about ACCA-X. I'm sure Isobel can too, because we work so closely with ACCA-X. But essentially, for those that are unaware, ACCA-X is a suite of 7 online courses, all geared towards the foundational level of accountancy and the applied knowledge exams. Now, you can click on this particular item and learn a little bit more about what that resource is. But what I want to do very quickly, because I've got the tab open, is I'm going to show you a little sneak peek of what our courses look like. Now, essentially, our ACCA-X courses offer an end-to-end solution. What I mean by that is if you're a student and you're looking to brush up on your technical knowledge, but you also want question practice, well, ACCA-X has ample opportunity for question practice, but as well as the technical content. Okay, all our courses have the same look and feel about them. So once you dip into one of our courses, you've got a virtual notice board, you've got loads of useful resources in terms of course handouts on the margins there. And if I dip into, let's say, a particular lesson, and it's just loading up, what you'll typically see is that information is presented using different modalities to cater for different learning styles and preferences. So we've got text on screen, but we've also got bite-sized video tutorials, and we've also got opportunities to practice. We've got interactives, so really does make it engaging. So like I say, I could talk hours on end about ACCA-X, but I'm conscious of time, so I'll show you some of the other resources. So definitely worthwhile dipping into this. Now, 4 of our courses are free, 3 of them are paid. You can find all the relevant information when you click on the ACCA-X item under this contents page here. Another really useful resource, if you're an ACCA student and you're registered with ACCA, you might be familiar with the Study Hub. Okay, now the Study Hub is essentially a digital textbook, slightly different to ACCA-X in the sense that ACCA-X is a bit of e-learning. It contains videos, interactives, graphics, text, whereas our Study Hub is a digital textbook. Okay, I'm going to show you what the Study Hub looks like in a moment as well, but this can also help you with your technical knowledge. So for example, Fel, if you're thinking, right, I'm doing management accounting, I'm struggling with absorption and marginal costing. Well, actually, if you dipped into the Study Hub specifically for the chapter about marginal and absorption costing, you can get all the information you need. Obviously, FA is my favorite subject, so I've got the FA tab open here, and this is what the Study Hub looks like. You can access this through your My ACCA account. And if you're, like I say, a registered ACCA student, you get access to this for free. So definitely worth dipping into if you haven't already. So what does this look like? Well, say, for example, you're doing FA and you're thinking, right, I'm struggling with a little bit about provisions. You might want to dip into this particular chapter. If you click through, it's got all the information that you need, okay, about provisions. There's also opportunities for question practice within the Study Hub as well, in the form of quizzes, practice questions, and there's also flashcards. I know as a student, I would have really benefited from this. You can test yourself on your understanding of key definitions and concepts using these flashcards. So that's another resource. We've also got the technical articles that you can dip into if you want specifics about certain topics written by the examining team. You can deep dive into certain topic areas. So discounts, for example, if you're struggling with IFRS 15 rules for discounts accounting, you can dip into this and see some numerical examples as well. Okay, so technical articles also useful. Final point that I just want to mention when it comes to technical knowledge is that there are examiner reports available under the examining team guidance. Okay, these examiner reports can be particularly useful if you're working towards a resit, because what they do is they call out mistakes, common mistakes that students tend to make within these, certain questions within certain topics in the exam. And by actually knowing what those mistakes might be, you can ensure that you don't make them in the exam. Okay, so worthwhile downloading a couple of these examiner reports, having a little dip into that. Now, the other areas of focus, obviously we said technical knowledge, we've covered some of the resources that you can use for that. You've also got question practice in the exam interface, time management, which I'm all going to bundle together. Now, the key resource that you want to look at here is the specimen exams, okay? So the specimen exams will provide you with exposure to the exam interface that you'll experience on the exam day, with the opportunity to obviously practice a full exam as well. Now, before I show you the interface of the computer-based exam software, I want to call out the specimen exam debrief videos, which I also referenced earlier. Now, these are available specifically for the Level 4 diploma and the applied knowledge exams. These are debrief videos for every single question within the specimen exams, okay? So worthwhile checking this out. They're housed on our YouTube channel. You will be able to pick up on those useful examiner tips and tricks, okay? Now, in terms of the specimen exam interface, and I won't dwell on this for too long, but if I dip into, and before I do, just want to highlight extra MTQs there as well, okay? So if you've dipped into the specimen exam already, you've got extra MTQs that you can also practice. But if you want to see the full exam, essentially click through the instructions, start the exam. This is what your exam interface will be like, okay? Obviously, you can work through the questions, and if you're stuck in a question, want to come back to it, use the flagging tool, okay? Click on that little icon. You will be able to see what questions you've flagged so that you can come back and revisit it. So really, really useful. And I'm conscious, obviously, I've rambled on a bit there, but hopefully that gives you an idea of the sort of resources you can use to help you with question practice, the specimen exam debrief videos. And the practice tests, if you wish to purchase these at a nominal amount, will give you additional question practice as well. So you can dip into the items in this contents page here to learn more. Now, Isobel, I will just hand back to you. And like I say, I know I sort of have taken up a bit more time, but really just to summarize, make sure you're brushing up on that technical knowledge using some of the resources that I've just flagged. Be sure to get in lots of question practice to hone not just that exam technique, but to get comfortable with the exam software, and so that you're also practicing your time management. So really useful resources, bookmark the page. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Isobel so she can continue with the session.
No worries, Krutika, and don't apologise. That was a really useful overview. Thank you. Now we are going to move on now to some general study tips. So these are tips on how to maximise your study time so that you enter into the exam feeling prepared and confident. So the first place to start is by creating a study plan. So you need to develop a realistic schedule, and you also need to set yourself goals that you can track progress against. We do have the ACCA Compass planning tool that helps you map out your exam journey. You can keep track of milestones, and you can use it to reflect on your progress as you approach exam day. So do check that out when you have a chance. It's also important to prepare in advance so that you know what you're going to cover during your study sessions. This way you're going to make the most of the session, and you won't waste any time deciding last minute what you're going to focus on in that study session. And for the same reason, make sure you have everything you need, including your study materials, nearby as well. If you're a full-time student, then you can devote all day to studying in theory, but you still need to plan a strategy, because if you don't plan properly, you do run the risk of feeling demoralized and frustrated. And for those of you studying part-time, the temptation, I'm sure, will be to study really intensively when you do get the chance. But it's really important that you add structure to your sessions and that you factor in regular breaks, as this is going to boost your concentration. You need to find a routine that works for you. So choose a time when you feel energized and find a place where you study most effectively. Write notes in your own style. So that's opposed to copying word for word from a textbook. And if you can, try explaining your answers to other students, because communicating information in your own words is a really excellent way to help solidify your knowledge. Finally, Krutika's just done a great job of giving an overview of the ACCA resources, including the practice tests that are available to you. Do use those, familiarise yourself with the exam interface and all the different question types, practice completing exam papers in a set time limit, and this will all help to improve your exam technique. And more importantly, boost your confidence, because it's all about feeling confident as you go into the exam. Now, moving on to stress management. This is all about your well-being and managing those exam nerves. Studying for an exam is a challenging and often stressful experience. Exam nerves are very, very common. So let's have a quick look now at the ways you can manage these and try and keep as calm as possible during the exam. So first things first, nerves are completely normal, but unfortunately, they're also an unavoidable part of studying. We're never going to beat them completely. So accept that and try and prepare for exam stress rather than trying to get rid of it completely. Don't compare yourself to others. That's very key. And don't be embarrassed to ask for support or ask questions if you need to. Try sharing tips with your fellow students and keep each other motivated as well. I've mentioned breaks, but it's really important to take regular short breaks during your studies, but also remind yourself of the benefits of doing that, because I know as well as anyone that you can often feel a bit guilty about taking time away from something like revision, but it really does help. It really improves your ability to concentrate. And sometimes studying in those shorter, more focused bursts can be more effective than lengthy sessions which leave you tired and feeling a bit stressed. Rest, eat, exercise. These are all key ingredients that will help you feel confident and prepared throughout your studies. Keep moving, make sure you're doing something physical, get enough rest, eat well, and stay hydrated. And then as you approach the exam itself, make sure you're prepared. So do everything you need to the night before, whether that's packing a bag and checking a route if you're going to an exam centre, or doing any necessary system checks if you're sitting remote exams. Finally, I just wanted to mention breathing exercises. I won't go into the details now, but there's lots of advice on this on the internet. So it's worth checking out all the different methods and testing these out ahead of your exam, because breathing techniques really help calm us and help us feel less overwhelmed. We can regain focus by breathing properly when nerves are stopping us from concentrating. Now it's almost time to finish this session, so let's have a quick recap about what we've covered today and what your next steps should be. So we did mention at the beginning that there are huge benefits to reflecting on your last exam. Do that critically and be honest. It'll help you address any weaknesses and grow from your exam setback. Do take time to perform that exercise if you haven't already. Then it's time to devise your plan and how to move forward. You need to get your exam booked and have a date to work towards to give yourself a motivational boost and improve your focus. Plus, if you've sat your last exam quite recently, then a lot of the technical knowledge will still be fresh in your mind. And if you wait too long to rebook, maybe you'll have to spend more time than you'd like to revisiting the theory. So think about getting that exam booked pretty soon. Make use of the ACCA resources, as we've already mentioned. And then also, when you are booking your exam, just remember, I've mentioned remote exams already, but it is possible to sit remotely invigilated on-demand exams. So check out the ACCA website to see if that's available in your area, as it may suit you better to sit your exam that way. Now that's it. We are out of time, unfortunately, but I want to leave you with a few last words. Failing an exam is an upsetting and unsettling experience, but remember, with hard work and perseverance, you will reach your goals eventually. We've said this before in other sessions, but I think it's really important to remember that lots of our students do fail at least one exam, and so many of them have already, and others will go on to reach their membership goals. You need to take away from this session that setbacks are a normal part of studying. They are temporary, though. They are not permanent barriers to your success. Remember that growth mindset. With time and effort, you can progress and you can achieve your goals. And yeah, that's it. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. Thank you so much to everyone watching. Thank you, Krutika, for all your useful advice. I hope this has been an inspiring session and hope you go on to book your next on-demand exam. You can start planning for success, and good luck. Take care from all of us at ACCA.
Good luck.